You're listening to 2012 and Beyond on WSLR Radio in Sarasota, 96.5 FM, and also streaming live at WSLR.org. My guest today is Andrew Basiago, and Andrew is the American lawyer, writer, scholar, and 21st century visionary who served in Project Pegasus at the dawn of the time-space age. Andy is also a lawyer in private practice in Washington State and the founder and president of the Mars Anomaly Research Society. His paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, has really opened up some new channels and thoughts on what may possibly be going on in the solar system and on other planets around us. So, Andy, hello, and thanks for being on the phone with me.
Hi, Emily. It's good to be with you today.
Andy, we're going to really be focusing on a project that you were involved with at the beginning of the 70s in 1971. But to start off with, I'd like if we could just talk a bit about yourself and your experiences when you were very young with Project Pegasus and what exactly that was.
Right. Project Pegasus was a classified research and development project within the defense technical community of the United States. It was launched under the aegis of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the agency that brought us the Internet. But before DARPA brought us the Internet, it brought the permanent secret government of the United States quantum access capability. The thrust of the secret research and development program was essentially remote sensing in time. That is to say that it was a technical project that would further the intelligence gathering capability of the United States government to inform the president and other executive branch officials and the United States military leadership of past and future events occurring non-locally in the time-space continuum. And so the project had under development by 1970 a set of methodologies and technologies to achieve quantum access. And by that I mean the capability to gather information from a non-local distant event in what we might describe as the quantum plenum. Conventionally, this would be regarded as time travel. And so a number of the time travel methodologies that were being derived and they were beginning to research the impact of the technologies on American civilians, including children, which explains my involvement in the project, ran the gamut of everything from conventional remote viewing, which I guess you would view as a form of psychic time travel in real time. They were also working with a device called the Montauk chair, which is a magnetic transducer that affects human consciousness and allows for a form of technically assisted psychic time travel by boosting a person's mind forward in time and allow them to pre-experience a moment in their own subjective future and then be interviewed about what they saw or pre-experiencing an episode in their own future. And they didn't know at the time whether that was the result of people's life experience being in their brain before it was perceived or being in time waves around them. But they did know that when they placed a person in this chair and placed them in this condition of magnetic transduction, they would have an astral projection forward physically in their own consciousness that would cause them essentially to collide with a moment in their own future and live it as they were experiencing it in real time, or as they would experience it in the future in real time.
Is that something that you experienced yourself, the Montauk chair?
Oh, absolutely. I went on when they first. Well, Dr. David Anderson of the Time Travel Research Institute has reported quite correctly, and I can corroborate his statement publicly, that beginning in the spring of 1970, the U.S. government placed thousands of American school children in the Montauk chair, using them as essentially the psychic interface between the chair and their own subjective futures. And then so after you came back from that astral projection and you found yourself sitting in the chair, there would be a nice lady from DARPA there who would then debrief you or question you about what you saw when you were having a pre-experience of, let's say, a 15 to 20 minute episode in your own future. And At that time, I was living in New Jersey. At the time I was in Pegasus, I was growing up in New Jersey. I only had one relative west of Philadelphia, which was my Uncle Ed was living in Santa Barbara, California, and I had no lawyers in the family. And one of the things that occurred when we were walking back from the room where the Montauk chairs were back to the learning lab that I'd been placed in is one of the other children in the project asked me, well, who were you this time? In other words, what did you see on this particular journey that we took this afternoon in the Montauk chair? And I said, I was a lawyer in Seattle. And that, in fact, is what I've become. I'm a lawyer in private practice here in Washington State. I haven't yet moved up to Seattle. Mars, the Mars Anomaly Research Society that I founded, is based there. But I actually live and practice law primarily in Southwest Washington, across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon. Nonetheless, as an 8-year-old in Project Pegasus, I had these visions of my future subjective experiences as an attorney in the state of Washington, actually pre-experienced them. And so when you would come back from one of those astral projections, then you might be asked questions like, well, was the television set on? Oh, well, tell us what was on the TV set. Oh, the President of the United States was giving a speech. What was his name? And so forth. So by boosting the psychic time traveler to their own subjective future, they were then able to work laterally and try to gather more information about what the experiencer saw of their own subjective future. Hence, they were trying to map the future using that methodology.
Oh, yeah, I just have a couple of questions on that. One would be, why were they using children? And also, was it frightening at the time to be going through that as a child?
I certainly had no fear in the Montauk chair. I'm going to describe for you today far more advanced time travel technologies that permitted quantum access of a far more threatening nature, in fact, a personally endangering nature. They were using children because essentially the provenance of this historically is that in the late 1950s, Admiral Hyman Rickover was concerned that the American school system was not producing plebes, that is to say, first-year undergraduates at the Naval Academy at Annapolis, that he had confidence he could train to become nuclear submarine captains in the atomic age. And so he launched a federal project called Project Talent that began to screen American school children for advanced intellectual ability, advanced psychic ability, leadership potential, advanced athletic ability, and other human factors so that these children could be provided specialized education so that ultimately, as their lives unfolded, they could be, recruited into the military through the military academies and receive further training to play specialized roles in the more complex and sophisticated post-war society that was emerging after World War II. So that was the overarching reason they were using children. The more specific reason that they were using children in the project that I was in, there were really 5 reasons. One was that, as I was going to describe, that there were more sophisticated forms of quantum access technologies under development. One of them was the teleportation device that derived from the papers of Nikola Tesla that he left at his death in 1943. And those had been seized by 2 War Department officials and forwarded to the world's leading physicists that were then gathering at Los Alamos, New Mexico, to build the atomic bomb. And the United States discovered what one of the devices in Tesla's papers did that afforded basically a teleportation capability by opening up voidal tunnels in the time-space continuum. And because teleportation emerged in 1967-68, by the time I was officially placed in the project, in Project Pegasus in the fall of 1969, they had already begun testing the cognitive and physiological effects of teleportation on civilians, including children. And so that was the first reason why, as a child, I was involved in essentially a dangerous experimental set of defense research and development activities. A second reason is because one of the other, really the second major advanced quantum access